Welcome to today's webinar, What's New in 314? Today we're going to start by talking about the upgrade weekend and then look at new features and bug fixes in the following listed in Evergreen. There's two modules with significant changes, which we're not going to be looking at today, and those are acquisitions and reports. The recording of last week's acquisition-specific webinar is available on our YouTube channel now, and the link will be included in our follow-up email. And the reporter-specific webinar will take place April 29th and May 1st, and registration for that is still open. Many individuals and organizations are involved in the creation of every release of Evergreen. The BC Libraries Cooperative is part of the Evergreen Community Development Initiative, and organizations contribute money to ECDI and then work together to fund development that benefits the Evergreen community and that individual organizations may not be able to fund on their own. And numerous accessibility improvements have been made to Evergreen's public catalog, generously funded by the BC government and based on recommendations from NELS testers and the Evergreen Community's VPAT, Voluntary Product Accessibility Template report. And a big thank you to all the NELS staff who did the testing. So this year, the upgrade will take place in April, and the servers will be unavailable from 9 p.m. Pacific, Saturday, April 5th, to 5 a.m. Pacific, Monday, April 7th. If you've done an upgrade with us before, you know that sometimes we're able to bring things back up on Sunday, but Monday morning is when we guarantee that we'll be back up. During the upgrade, the web client and public catalog will not be available. The offline module will also not work while our servers are being upgraded. The majority of Sitka libraries are closed on Sundays, but if your library is one of the ones that will be open on Sunday, April 6th, you will need to manually track your circulations, whether that's using Notepad or Excel or a different method. Do contact support if you have questions ahead of the upgrade. We have taken additional steps to allow patrons to access most electronic resources while Evergreen is being upgraded. So while the web client and the public catalog will be unavailable, authentication of third-party services will continue, and your patrons' access to most digital resources will not be affected by the upgrade. With the upgrade just about a month away, there are some important things that you can do to get ready. First, you can make sure your relevant staff have accounts on bc.libraries.coop so they receive upgrade-related communications. These updates will also be posted to the staff news in Evergreen, but won't be viewable while we're upgrading. We have posted a 314 preview page with a list of new features and bug fixes. The list is not comprehensive, but highlights the biggest changes, as well as bug fixes of interest, and it'll give staff a good idea of the changes coming. Staff can also watch our new features videos, which will be coming soon, to see the new features in action. And we'll be posting new videos up to and after the upgrade, so do check back often. If you haven't already, probably time to start thinking about letting your patrons know the upgrade is coming. If you're a LibPress library, there will be a slide available that you can put on your website there. Now, before you log into Evergreen on April 7th or April 8th, if you're closed on Mondays, you must clear your browser cache. This will ensure any cache data from 311 is removed, and instructions on clearing your cache can be found in our documentation, and there will be a link to that in the follow-up email as well. If you run into an issue, clear your cache if you haven't already. Check the known issues list that we'll have posted. Check our documentation, which will be updated for 314 as of April 7th, and see if a workflow has changed. And once you've tried all that, contact co-op support. Please make sure you follow the guidelines for submitting support tickets and include as much information as possible and any relevant barcodes, screenshots, error messages, so that we can assist you. And I'm just going to exit out of my slideshow here. And now we're going to take a look at Evergreen 314. I will say we are still testing and adding fixes, so there will be some slight differences from what we see today and what you'll see on April 7th. And because we didn't upgrade Evergreen last year due to the cloud migration, this is a bigger upgrade than our last few. So with this upgrade, we move from Evergreen 311 to Evergreen 314, which means we're getting new features and bug fixes from 312, 313, and 314. We won't have time to cover everything today, and we're still testing some things, but we'll talk about the most significant changes. And you can make sure you can check out the new feature videos and the Upgrade 314 page for new features and bug fixes closer to the upgrade as we continue to add to that. So we're going to start with the public catalog here. Throughout the public catalog, you'll see differences in formatting and alignment. There's been extensive changes to the underneath of the public catalog to improve accessibility and address the issues uncovered by the NELS testers and through the VPAT report. Patrons who use patrons who use screen readers to navigate the public catalog should find that it works significantly better than it used to. So I'm going to start by doing a search here. And I'm just going to click on the location, so Maple Library here. So one new feature is that in addition to your opening hours, which already display in your public catalog, your upcoming closures will also display. So this is the closures that you've entered in the close dates editor. We recommend checking to see what you've got set now and making any needed changes before this becomes patron visible. So it may be that there's just some formatting that you want to adjust since it'll be visible to your patrons now. And scrolling back up, I'm now going to go to my account and log in here. And we'll go to my account in the top there. And we're going to preferences and personal information. And one significant change here in my account is that patrons can now edit their preferred name themselves. So if I click on the change button here, I can put my password back in, and I can put in what the preferred name is. And you can see it's now updated. And Evergreen uses that preferred name when sending out email notifications. And as well, you can see it's updated what the display name is for my account here. So staff can, of course, continue to change that in the staff client for patrons, but patrons now have the ability to do that themselves. And I will just note as well, if you've looked at the personal information and preferences page recently on 311, you'll note that the formatting and presentation of the page is a little different on 314, and that goes back to the changes that have been made underneath to improve accessibility. So I'm just going to log out of my account, and now I'm going to click on the Request Library Card link. And for those of you who use the self-registration form, there are two new library settings. One of them controls how date of birth displays, and you can see it now has it broken down. So it's a little easier if a patron, if a patron is entering that information to make sure that they're entering it in the format that's needed. And you're able to change that through the library settings. So it can be month, day, year, day, month, year, whatever combination of those three fields you're looking for. The other library setting gives you the option to hide the requested username field from this form if you're not wanting your patrons to request a specific username at the time of sign up. So those are the major changes in the public catalog. So now we're going to switch over to the staff client. And we're going to start with some general changes here. So most of Evergreen is now in Angular, which is a more modern development framework. And development frameworks are tools that help developers build applications and websites. And this means you're going to see more consistency between interfaces and, in general, a more cohesive staff client. There are some parts of Evergreen that still use Angular JS, most notably the circulation module. So some of the features we're going to look at won't apply to the circulation module yet. But let's start with menus, which you'll see throughout Evergreen. So if we go to the circulation menu, you can see we now have shortcuts appearing on the menu items. And you're also, if we go to the main menu here, we have a keyboard shortcut option, and clicking on that will bring you up a list. So if you have any staff who like to use keyboard navigation through the staff client, this will be helping them to find those shortcuts that they might not have known existed. And it just makes it very easy to know what those are. Right beside that menu here, you may notice this sunshine. This is now dark mode, or sorry, light and dark mode. So we're currently in light mode, and I'm going to change us to dark mode. And you can see that if we go to different places within Evergreen, it continues in that dark mode. Um, we have noted so far that there are some issues in dark mode with white boxes showing and a few contrast issues. We've been reporting those as we find them, but overall, we're finding that it works really well. I'm just going to switch back to light mode now. And you'll notice there's also the auto option. And if you choose auto, it'll detect what your browser is set to. So back to the light mode, we're here on the holds pull list, which might look a little different to you, which we'll talk about the changes to the holds pull list shortly. But first, we're going to use it to talk about some things that have changed throughout Evergreen. So the function bar here has a much more consistent look throughout Evergreen. You'll see the actions button always says the word actions, and the grid settings, the grid options has that gear symbol always. Now, if we click on that gear symbol, the options for managing your columns have expanded. So I'm going to start by going to manage columns here. And you can see it looks a little bit different. You now have the ability to say how you want the text to align within a column. By default, text will align left and numbers will align right. But we could choose, for instance, to have the title center align. You might be able to see it. It's a little grayed out there, but it's made that change already. You can also choose how long in characters you want columns to be. And you also have sort priorities. So I've said here that I want shelving location. I want this list to sort first by shelving location and then by call number. And then it will automatically do that sort by default anytime I open up this interface. You also have arrow keys on the side here to allow you to move the columns around. So we could put shelving location up at the very top. We can also click and drag. So if I actually wanted it to come after author, so now we have it in between author and call number. So it makes moving things around and reconfiguring your columns easier than it currently is. So I'm just going to click Save there. And you can see we've got that center alignment and the columns have moved as I specified. Now, one other thing that you can do is you can also grab a column and you can drag and drop it into a new location. And for some of them, you can also drag and drop, drag to expand or contract the size of that column. So there's a lot more you're able to do on the fly. And we'll just go back to the grid settings and save our grid settings. Now in 311, if I go back to here, we saw this Manage Actions menu option come into the Holdings view in the staff catalog. And you're going to see this option in more places, meaning you can remove actions from the menu if you don't use those actions. So if I click on that, if I never want to mark items as discard weed from the pull list, I can uncheck that, close that, and then go back and save my grid settings. And from the actions menu, I no longer have that as an option. I can always add it back in the future if I do need it. Now, the other option to note on this settings menu is, I'm actually going to select a few things here first. So now if I go back there, I have this print selected rows option. So if I click print selected rows, you can see it's allowing me to print just those two that I have selected. So I think something that could be quite handy with the pull list, and you'll see this in other places in Evergreen as well. So just going to hit cancel there because I don't actually want to print it. So with the pull list, because as you can see, there are some new features here. Just going to uncheck those. I now have filters where I can filter by pickup library, or I can filter by specific shelving locations. So the pickup library filter is something that could be really useful to libraries participating in ILC because you're able to select the specific pickup libraries. So I'm going to choose Maple here. And now it's only showing me the holds for Maple that need to be pulled. So if there's a reason that you're only wanting to pull local holds on a particular day, you can easily filter to just see those holds that are going to be picked up at your library. And then if you go to print full list, you can see it's only including those visible holds. I'm going to clear that to get my whole list back. I can also select specific shelving locations. So if I just wanted to go pull the adult fiction and adult nonfiction titles, and I'll click apply, you can see it's now filtered that list to those two, and it shows me what shelving locations I'm filtering to. And again, if I was to go to print full list, it would just print the ones that are visible. So you've got a lot more flexibility around what you want to print out and have display on those pull lists. Now, overall, there aren't a lot of changes specific to the circulations module. Work is ongoing to angularize the circulation module. Possibly we'll see the new module in 2026, but there's no expected date yet. There are some bug fixes to be aware of. Items with the status on display should now appear on your holds pull list. Currently in 311, those ones don't. When checking out items requiring a deposit, the pop-up is now going to indicate the amount of the deposit. And if I go over to a patron here, and I'm just going to put in my barcode. So you can see that deposit amount is indicated right on the pop-up. I'm going to force this action, and it automatically bills the patron, and that bill is viewable right away, which isn't currently the case in 311. The hold shelf now has a column where you can display the user's permission group. So if you're wanting to see on your hold shelf which holds are for staff versus public or for particular permission groups, that's something that's now visible without having to go into every account and see what their permission group is. And if we go to edit here, we now have a button that will allow you to clear the default pickup location that somebody's set. Currently, you can change that default pickup location, but you can't entirely clear it. So if needed, you'll be able to clear that. The last thing to highlight with circulation is if we go to holds here, and I'm just going to select my hold and go to detail view and scroll down to reset entries. Um, there's now reset entries visible in the account, as you can see here. What this feature does is it records vital information from a hold every time it's reset. And it's especially useful to know this in situations where a patron or a staff member wants to know why why a copy wasn't chosen for a hold. Um, so here we have one where we can see a hold was manually retargeted by a staff member. We'd also be able to see if it had naturally timed out, if it had been canceled and then uncanceled. So for troubleshooting holds, this gives us another piece of information that both you and we can work with to figure out why things have happened the way they have. I'm now going to take us to the staff catalog. So cataloging and search the catalog. And there's some pretty significant changes to the staff catalog. So to start with, if we go to search preferences, there's a number of new search preferences that have been added and can be set for your workstation. So you'll see you've got the ability to specify that default limit to available and group formats and additions are checked by default if you wish. You also can choose whether or not you're highlighting search terms. And if you use course reserves and have course reserves turned on, there is an additional search preference that displays specific to course reserves, and that will be in our documentation. So I'm just going to hit return here. And I'm going to do a search. I'm just going to exclude my electronic resources. So one bug fix that we have here is that the more link has been restored to the facets in the staff catalog. So if we click on that, we can see all of them instead of just the current 5. You might notice there's also a buckets tab here with facets. And here we can see record buckets, which we will come back to in a little bit. The other thing with the facets is there is now a hide facets button. So if you're wanting more room for your search results and not using those facets, you can hide those and then you can easily show them again. If we go into our record here, in the item table, if you're logged in with a staff account that doesn't have permission to edit items, you'll no longer see this edit link. So only staff who actually have the ability to make those edits are going to see that link. So staff with circ plus copy edit, circ plus full cat, and local system administrator will see that. Will see the link. Under Actions menu, we've got the clear added content cache restored. So if you are running into issues with how a record is displaying in the staff catalog, first thing to do is clear that added content cache and see if that resolves the issue. Also restored is the quick receive option for serials. And I'm just going to switch us to another tab here where I have a serial. So if I go to serials and quick receive, I can just click continue here. And I have my issue to receive. I can edit my call number. I'm going to say MAR 2025, give it a barcode, and then I'll just receive that. So if you're using the serials module, the restoring that functionality should make receiving issues a lot faster. And I'm just going to switch back to that other record here. And one other here is a change to how the patron view button works. So currently in 311, if you click that button, it's going to open up the public catalog, but it's going to open up the default entire consortium Sitka OPAC. In 314, if you click on that patron view, it is going to scope to your library. Now, this is made possible through a library setting that's actually intended to work with discovery layers. So if you're one of the libraries using a discovery layer like BiblioCommons, we can actually set it up so when you click that patron view link, it opens up that record in BiblioCommons. So hopefully that will be a lot more useful than the patron view currently is in 311. Now, switching over to look at some cataloging things, if we go into Mark Edit, and I'm just going to switch to the enhanced Mark Editor and scroll down a bit, you'll notice that the Mark Editor looks quite different than it currently does. Overall, the functionality hasn't really changed, but there's some new things that you can do. So you'll see it's highlighting which row I'm selected on. I have the ability to copy a field. I can add a new field after the one that I'm currently on. I have a delete X there. I also have the ability to drag and drop rows, and I will say I was not very good at this on Tuesday. So I've got some more testing that needs to happen around that one. Because you probably don't actually want the 010 there. So let's move that, possibly move that back up. There we go. You also have an add subfield button there. Um, and you can X off on the subfields. The 007 still has its link to the physical characteristics wizard. And if we left click into the fields here up in the grid, we can still select the different values based on what's in the MARC standards. Now, we still have the help option as well, which will show you those shortcuts that you can currently use and are still available for you to use. One other thing that turning on that help does, though, is if we scroll down, it's pulling information about the different records, or sorry, about the different fields. So you're being told what the field is, what the possible values for the indicators are, and what subfields can be used. And you'll see that as you scroll through the record, available for most of the fields. So that can be really handy as you don't need to go out of Evergreen to check which subfield you're wanting to add, especially for fields that you don't use very often. And then if we want to turn that off, we just click on help again and it hides all of that. Um, Now the new enhanced Mark Editor here is available as you're seeing it in the staff catalog, also through Z3950 and in acquisitions. However, if we go to cataloging and create new Mark record, and I'm just going to tell it that I don't want to save my changes, and I'll just pick a template there. So if you are creating an original record, this doesn't use the new enhanced editor yet. but this has been reported as a bug. Continuing on with cataloging, if we go back to the cataloging menu and import record from Z3950, you'll notice it looks a little different. Again, the functionality is all the same. It's just a difference in display. The biggest change is that the search query is on the right-hand side of the screen and the services and credentials are now on the left. You can still make adjustments to the services that you have selected and save your defaults. And I'm just going to bring an ISBN in here. So I just hit enter on my keyboard, but you can hit submit there. And we have our results. I will also mention that the fact that the clear form button is over here and the submit is over there has been reported as a bug. I have managed to clear my form a couple times attempting to submit my search. So we can take a look at the results. We can view the mark to see which one best matches what we have in hand that we're cataloging. I'll just hit close. And then you have the options as you do now to import, to edit, then import, to mark a local record for overlay, and to overlay. So I'm just going to choose one of these and go edit, then import. And you can see that enhanced mark editor appears. We do also have the option to switch over to the flat text editor, same as we do now. And for instance, we could pull all of the copy information out of that record before importing it. And we could then save our changes and import that record. And we'll go to that record. And then you would add your holding as normal. Also with cataloging, if we go to the Mark Batch Import Export, there's a new feature here for background imports. So I'm going to just fill in my fields here so that it will let me do an import. You would likely make different selections than I'm making. I'm just making some selections so that I can import that file. I'm going to click Request Background Import, and I'm going to put in the email address that I would like it to send notifications to. I'm going to choose my file, and then I can click Upload. And you can see rather than it going through and doing the whole processing, it just tells me my upload process is 100% and I can go to the background imports management. So here I can see that the file that I just loaded has a state of new with a request time, but it doesn't have a complete time yet. So what Evergreen will do is it'll send an email to that address that you entered, letting you know that your file has been queued for background import. And then once that completes, it will send another email telling you that that file has been loaded, so that you can come into the background imports and continue working with it. Now, on the training server, we currently have this running every 2 minutes so that we're able to demonstrate it. We're working on figuring out how often it should run on the live server, whether it's, should be every hour, every half hour. And so we're still working to figure that out. There's a question, when would you want to use background imports? So if you're importing large files that take a while to load, that's when we think that you would want to use background imports. So you can have it set to go and then go off and continue to do other things and then come back when it's loaded. If anybody starts using the background imports once we are live on 3.14, We'd be really interested in hearing what you're using it for and how it's working for you, so that we can update our documentation based on how it's actually working for libraries. And I'm just going to refresh and see if that has finished. There we go. So if I go to inspect queue here, I've got my queue. Um, it didn't actually import any of my records because I told it just to import the non-matching ones. So I could go through and I could import the rest, assuming that I want them to match with what they have matched to. The last thing with cataloging, if we go to cataloging and record buckets, is that record buckets have been completely redesigned. You have the ability to star buckets to add them to your favorites. And as you saw on the buckets tab in the staff catalog, those favorites showed up in the list. Now, by default, it's showing me my buckets. I can also look at my favorites, and one of these favorites is one that is shared with me, as opposed to one that I created. You also have the ability to look at ones that you have shared with other users and look at ones that are shared with you. Um, you've got a button for new bucket at the top here. And I'll go back to my buckets so I can actually see it. So I've got my summer reading club bucket now. I can star that so it becomes a favorite. I have the ability to edit it, to share it with others. So if I wanted to share that bucket, there is the ability to share it just so that people can view it, share it so that others can edit it, or share it with your entire library. There's currently a bug where that we're working on, where if you share it with others to view, they can still edit. So it's not working quite as we expected in that respect. But in this case, we're going to share it with all of Maple. So now anybody working at the Maple Public Library is able to edit that summer reading club bucket. Now, if I click on the bucket title, I come in here, I don't have anything in my bucket yet. I do have the ability to upload records into my bucket. And I can do this using a CSV or a text file that has record IDs in it. So you can run a report that includes record IDs and upload that to populate your bucket. You can also just paste record IDs into this field to add them. I'm just going to hit cancel import in this case. There is a search catalog option, so you can search for items to add to your bucket. What I found is actually a faster workflow is if you star your bucket and then go to cataloging, search the catalog, do your search. Click on that buckets tab, and we're going to select the ones that we want added. And then beside Summer Reading Club, we can get an add to here, and we can add those to the buckets. So that's the fastest way that I've found to add records to your bucket. And then if I click on Summer Reading Club there, it opens my bucket up and I can see the contents of it. There's going to be updated documentation and videos for record buckets coming. Finally, just to talk about a couple of administration changes. So if we go to administration and local administration and into surveys, This upgrade restores the ability for libraries to create surveys that can be used uh, with your patrons. In the past, I know some libraries have used it for opt-in for newsletters. There does remain one bug, which is that libraries can see all of the surveys in Sitka. So this page here doesn't have a library selector currently, so you're able to see everybody's surveys listed, which is the same if you were to go to this interface in 311 right now. You're not able to edit each other's surveys, but you can see them. And that has been reported as a bug. And then the last thing to mention, specifically for those of you who are LibPress libraries, there are some new features coming with how carousels can be created. For example, if we go to cataloging and item bucket, and under buckets, you now have an option to create a carousel from an item bucket. Currently in 311, you can only create a carousel from a record bucket. And the same functionality is available through item status. So if you scan a list of items into item status, you can turn that into a carousel as well. Keep an eye out for updates to the LibPress documentation coming in April on how you can use those new features. And that takes us to the end of the new features that we're going to look at today. So I'm going to stop the recording.